Hollywood loves the young and beautiful, and it's all too easy to think of our favorite stars as being immortal up on the big screen. Sadly, that isn't the case. In the 90s, Helen Hunt was everywhere. She starred in the long-running sitcom Mad About You, and the world was mad about her. In fact, although we've seen plenty of Hollywood legends build incredible award-winning careers over decades on their way to passing away peacefully at a ripe old age, actors are really just like everyone else. We never really know when our time is going to be up, and over the years, a number of promising young actors have given us sobering reminders of just how fragile life can be. With that in mind, we're taking the opportunity to pay tribute here to a number of the most talented performers who said goodbye long before anyone could have expected. But since the show's cancellation in 1999, we've heard increasingly less and less from the actress. From private tragedies to terrible accidents, here's a fond look back at just a few of the actors we've lost far too soon. Sky Nicole Bartusiak. Sky Nicole Bartusiak isn't anywhere near as well known as some of the other names on this list, but she compiled an incredible repertoire of credits during her too brief career, especially considering she was only 21 when she succumbed to an accidental drug overdose in 2014. Why is that? Here's what Helen Hunt's been up to since receding from the spotlight. She's been dealing with a bad breakup. Breakups happen all the time, both in Hollywood and out, but Helen Hunt surprised many in 2017 by calling off things with her boyfriend of 16 years, a producer named Matthew Carnahan. The two had been together since 2001. In 2004, they welcomed a daughter, Makina Leigh Gordon Carnahan, into the world. A mere 7 years old when she booked a role in The Cider House Rules, Bartusiak went on to star alongside such famous names as Mel Gibson, The Patriot, Michael Douglas, Don't Say a Word, and Hilary Swank, a stage adaptation of The Miracle Worker. Along the way, she also appeared in a supporting role on 24 and was nominated 3 times for a Young Artist Award. According to Bartusiak's mother, who spoke with reporters after Sky's passing, the young star had been planning to move into directing and producing before she died. Opening a painful window into the family's final moments with her, Bartusiak's mother described the valiant efforts of emergency medical personnel as they tried in vain to revive her. And yet, despite In Touch Weekly reporting that Helen and Matthew always appeared to be super in love, they couldn't keep it going forever. They were working on her for 45 minutes and could not get a heartbeat, she said. According to a source for the tabloid, the breakup was very messy. That same source revealed that the pair had done this several times before. "I've done CPR on that kid more than one time and it just didn't work this time." Paul Walker, an action movie veteran who served as a cornerstone of the Fast and the Furious franchise, Paul Walker had broader ambitions beyond starring in your average shoot-'em-up thriller. While helping bring the Fast and Furious movies to global popularity, he branched out with projects like the Hurricane Katrina-inspired Hours and the ensemble comedy Pawn Shop Chronicles. Matthew moved out a few times over the years. Helen would always take him back, and then time would pass and she'd kick him out again, they reported. There's really no telling what he might have been able to accomplish if he'd somehow survived the tragic car crash that took his life at the age of 40 in November 2013. Seeking in part to focus attention on automobile safety, Walker's daughter Meadow filed a wrongful death lawsuit against Porsche. But now, it seems they're done for real, and even their mutual love for their daughter couldn't keep them together anymore. She's been raising her daughter. On May 13, 2004, shortly before her 41st birthday, Helen Hunt gave birth to Makina, her first child, and an obviously compelling reason to step back from the Hollywood grindstone. After life without kids, it's completely understandable if Hunt wanted to stay home more to raise her firstborn. Now that Makina is no longer a small child, we may start to see more of Hunt in the celebrity world again. The bottom line is that the Porsche Carrera GT is a dangerous car, the family's attorney told reporters. Then again, perhaps not. Makina will likely need tons of love and support during the breakup of her family, and she remains Hunt's only child. It's possible that Hunt will continue to shy away from the spotlight in favor of motherhood until Makina reaches adulthood. It doesn't belong on the street. And we shouldn't be without Paul Walker or his friend, Roger Rodas. The suit was settled in late 2017, although the terms of the agreement were kept confidential. Heath Ledger got his start on Australian TV, but for worldwide audiences, their first glimpse of his gifts came courtesy of the 1999 teen comedy 10 Things I Hate About You. Ledger's work as the brooding teen Patrick Verona, while certainly one of the movie's highlights, didn't really hint at the depth of his talent, which was only exposed after he shrugged off his shot at Hollywood hunkdom in favor of taking on more challenging parts in pictures like Monsters Ball and Brokeback Mountain. Only time will tell. Box office struggles. It isn't like Helen Hunt has stopped making movies since her prime Mad days. It's just that, with a few exceptions, you may not have heard about them. At the height of her career, Hunt was starring in films like 1997's As Good as It Gets, and the combination of her charisma and Jack Nicholson's expert crack avoidance netted the rom-com almost $315 million worldwide. For many, Ledger's defining role came as the Joker in The Dark Knight, which netted him a Best Supporting Actor Oscar after his shocking death of an accidental prescription drug overdose in early 2008. A year before that, she was in Twister, a disaster epic that grossed almost $500 million. Only 28 when he died, Ledger would certainly have gone on to even greater things. It's a tribute to the quality of Ledger's too brief body of work that 10 years after his death, his life and legacy were honored with the documentary I Am Heath Ledger, an intimate look at the actor assembled partly using archival footage filmed by Ledger himself. As his sister Kate told the Los Angeles Times after its release, helping shepherd the film to completion helped heal a number of old wounds. "It's been quite a cathartic experience in many ways," she admitted. Right after Mad About You ended, she starred in 2000's What Women Want and Cast Away, which took in $375 million and $430 million, respectively. But then came films like The Curse of the Jade Scorpion, Dr. T and the Women, Bobby, and The Sessions, all of which failed to impress moviegoers. Her rock-bottom moment has to be 2011's Every Day, which opened in 3 theaters, never made it past 4, grossed a paltry $46,029 over 10 weeks, and limped away with a whimper. "Heath was a soulmate of mine, and we were incredibly close. It has brought a bit of closure for me. And what makes Every Day's failure even worse is that it was actually Hunt's return to the screen after a 3-year hiatus. Critics weren't kind to Then She Found Me in 2007. Helen Hunt took her first shot at directing and starring in a film with Then She Found Me, an adaptation of the Eleanor Lippman novel. I'll Never Forget Him and I'll Never Be the Same. It was the kind of dramedy Hunt seemed particularly suited for, having had such success with As Good as It Gets, which helped define the genre. Unfortunately, Then She Found Me fell flat with critics like Karina Chocano of the Los Angeles Times, who singled out Hunt's performance by calling it a little too whiny, a little too angry to be very sympathetic. Ouch. Christy Desmith of the Minneapolis Star-Tribune took shots at both of Hunt's roles, writing that the film's endeavor at realism is not particularly artful, and Hunt's direction was heavy-handed. Desmith twisted the knife by digging at Hunt's performance as well, distilling her portrayal of a devoted party pooper who viewers can barely stand as Hunt's shtick. Double ouch. Bobby didn't inspire the social commentary she'd hoped for in 2006. Helen Hunt was coerced out of semi-retirement, as she put it, to take a small role in Emilio Estevez's directorial effort Bobby, which centered on the day Robert F. But it's helped me, in a way, to move on. River Phoenix got his start at the tender age of 10, and quickly found fame through memorable appearances in 80s movies like Stand By Me and Explorers. Kennedy was assassinated at the Ambassador Hotel in Los Angeles. Of the film's importance to her, Hunt said, "My daughter will hear what Kennedy said in a way that might be feelable to her in a way, because she will have, if she watches the movie, will have watched this group of human beings make their way toward that fateful moment, so by the time Bobby Kennedy's speech plays, her heart will be open and she will really hear what he said." Hopefully Hunt's daughter had the intended reaction, unlike Ty Burr at the Boston Globe, who wrote, "Bobby is a cry of sociopolitical agony that shoots itself in the foot on a scene-by-scene basis," and compared the film to a freeway pileup. Critic Cole Smithy was even less kind, writing, "This movie has everything to do with Estevez's needy ego, and nothing to do with Bobby Kennedy. It is a disgrace." Granted, none of those are particular slams against Hunt, but we're guessing Bobby wasn't exactly the triumphant Hollywood return she may have had in mind.
It's hard to improve on Oscar Wilde before Bobby and Then She Found Me. Critics also took apart A Good Woman, an adaptation of an Oscar Wilde play that Helen Hunt described to Paste magazine as having a real heart and soul. Asked what drew her to the role, Hunt said, "It has all the earmarks of a really good part. I certainly saw in there the potential for a character I haven't seen in a little while." While the part may have been juicy, critics didn't exactly love what Hunt did with it. Keith Phipps of the AV tempted with teen idol status, Phoenix mostly avoided paycheck roles, focusing on less commercial films such as The Mosquito Coast, Little Nikita, and Running on Empty. Club wrote, Helen Hunt looks embarrassingly out of place trying to play an infamous seductress. But while he led a serious actor's life on the big screen, his personal affairs were sadly far more stereotypical for young Hollywood. Her every gesture, expression, and inflection suggests a kindly aunt more than a femme fatale. As if that wasn't bad enough, Moira MacDonald of the Seattle Times wrote, Hunt is completely at sea here, flatly intoning her lines as if she'd memorized them phonetically, adding, it's a mystifyingly bad performance, and it drags down the entire movie. With reviews like that coming in, we'd probably consider taking a step away from the big screen as well. She's moved behind the camera sometimes, you don't hear much about someone because they're working behind the scenes. His dangerous habits caught up with him in the fall of 1993, when the 23-year-old Phoenix collapsed outside a Los Angeles club after overdosing on multiple drugs. Phoenix's passing proved a cautionary tale in any number of ways. Aside from offering a sobering lesson to young would-be stars with a partying streak, it ended up serving as an agonizing example of what can happen to a movie when an actor dies during filming. This appears to be at least somewhat the case for Helen Hunt, who's been directing more over the past decade. As Variety recaps, she started by directing several episodes of Mad About You, but didn't return to the art until 2007, with Then She Found Me. Phoenix's final role, in a movie ultimately titled Dark Blood, languished unseen for over a decade, and when his own terminal diagnosis prompted director George Sluizer to finish the movie, he had to battle Phoenix's family to get it out. As previously mentioned, the film failed to impress, but it was evidence that Hunt was looking to do more than just be a leading lady. Then, after another long break, she started directing in earnest. So far focusing mostly on television, she's overseen an episode of Californication, 2 of Revenge, and 1 each for Life in Pieces, House of Lies, This Is Us, and Feud, Betty and Joan. Dark Blood finally screened on the festival circuit in 2013, to largely positive reviews. John Belushi's wild image was part of what audiences loved about him during his breakout years on Saturday Night Live. While that manic, outsized energy was great for SNL and Animal House, it was only part of a lifestyle that was far too intense to last. As Belushi's stardom continued to rise with 1980's Blues Brothers movie and a host of planned projects that would have highlighted his dramatic range, his chemical indulgences continued to worsen. Despite the best efforts of friends and loved ones concerned for his well-being, Belushi succumbed to a drug overdose in March of 1982, at the age of 33. Kathy Evelyn Smith, an acquaintance of Belushi's later described by the Los Angeles Times as a former rock groupie, faced murder charges for her role in his death, specifically the fact that she admitted furnishing the star with copious amounts of drugs, including 20 injections of cocaine and heroin over the last 24 hours of his life alone. Every time you stuck a needle in someone's arm, you put their life at risk, said the judge who ultimately sentenced her to 3 years in prison in 1986. And as a result of your actions, John Belushi is dead. Chris Farley's infectious energy and ample girth provoked plenty of John Belushi comparisons after Farley joined the cast of Saturday Night Live in the spring of 1990. Sadly, the 2 stars also shared similarities off-screen, and like Belushi, Farley's SNL tenure was shadowed by concerns for his long-term health. In addition, she directed a second movie, 2015's Ride. While it wasn't her best effort, 48% on Rotten Tomatoes, she's clearly working hard to get better at her new profession and will only improve over time. She slowed down after her Oscar win. In an interview with the Daily Beast, Helen Hunt said that part of the reason she shifted into low gear after her late 90s boom was due to her Oscar win for As Good as It Gets. That led to a deal at Sony, which led to her going into writing mode.
When I wasn't getting acting jobs all the time that I liked, I was writing and writing and writing. In spite of his personal demons, Farley branched out into a promising film career that included the 1995 cult classic Tommy Boy, but after he was fired from SNL the same year, he never really came close to achieving his potential. 10 years of that "That's how Then She Found Me happened," Hunt said, adding, "As that was happening, I'd just been in the last big wave of movies about people talking to each other and trying to love each other, so as that was shrinking, I was trying to make one of those movies." Like Belushi, Farley was only 33 at his time of death, the sad result of a drug overdose in December 1997. As highlighted by an Entertainment Weekly report filed days after Farley's death, the star seesawed between trying to get healthy, he was reportedly in and out of rehab at least 17 times over a 2-year period, and pursuing his stated ambition to live fast and die young. EU quoted a call girl who spent time with Farley just before his death, and her description of his behavior that day doubles as a bittersweet summary of his career. "So I kept rewriting it subtly." On top of that, Hunt said during this time, studios not only stopped financing the kind of films she typically made, but she also wasn't particularly fond of the genre in the first place. "That's what I don't get, the economic thing. And the bankers famously don't read them. I don't think he knew what he wanted," she shrugged. "They'll say, Helen Hunt in a romantic comedy, you can have $3.4 million, Hunt said, adding, "There's also dramedy, which is my least favorite word, even though I've made 2 of them." In other words, Hunt and the studios got sick of the kind of movies she was making at the exact same time. She can afford to be choosy even before her film career blew up. Helen Hunt slowed her professional pace in the wake of Mad About You, and one possible reason may well be the simplest: she's made a lot of money. You could just tell he was on a rampage. He just kept bouncing from room to room. Philip Seymour Hoffman, arguably one of the greatest actors of his generation, Philip Seymour Hoffman carved out a solid niche for himself as one of Hollywood's that guy supporting players before getting a leg up from director Paul Thomas Anderson, who cast him in a series of productions starting with 1996's Hard 8. As his profile rose, Hoffman bounced between arthouse dramas, mainstream comedies, and even blockbuster action pictures like Mission: Impossible 3 and the Hunger Games franchise. Sadly, he also struggled with substance abuse, and after more than 20 years of sobriety, he relapsed in 2013, overdosing on a mixture of drugs early the following year, at the age of 46. "I wonder whether Phil somehow knew that he was going to die young," Hoffman's widow Mimi wrote in an emotionally searing 2017 essay for Vogue. "She has absolutely no need to work anymore, unless she really wants to." According to The Richest, Hunt's net worth is around $55 million. He never said those words, but he lived his life as if time was precious. Maybe he just knew what was important to him and where he wanted to invest his love. That includes a Manhattan apartment that, as of 2011, was valued at $2.75 million. Hunt's wealth increased magnificently in May 1998, as she and Mad co-star Paul Reiser negotiated pay raises from $250,000 an episode to an incredible $1 million per episode. "I always felt there was plenty of time, but he never lived that way." Corey Monteith teen-oriented entertainments come in hot and slowly fade away, only to be replaced by the next thing, but in the early 2010s the big show on the air for young people was Glee. An innovative hour-long dramedy, it was also a musical, based around a motley crew of high school kids who come together to form a glee club and sing familiar and popular songs. It was nominated for many Emmys and made stars out of its young cast, particularly Lea Michele as Barbra Streisand wannabe Rachel and Corey Monteith as her boyfriend, a good-hearted, lunk-headed jock-turned-singer named Finn. While Finn was a simple man, Monteith was not. Though this pay grade only lasted them through the final season, the show ended the following year. Its 22 episodes still netted both of them $22 million each. That, plus Hollywood blockbuster money, has given her wealth beyond most anyone's wildest dreams. Off-screen, he was a decade older than the teenager he played, and had already done a lot of living in the form of a struggle with substance abuse that he said led him to drop out of real-life high school. So next time you're wondering why Helen Hunt isn't everywhere anymore, the answer might just be, she doesn't have to be. A personal loss. One of the hardest things for anyone to face is the death of a family member, and unfortunately, Helen Hunt has had to deal with just that.
On December 17, 2016, Gordon Hunt, father to Helen and famed director of cartoons and live-action television, passed away at the age of 87. According to The Hollywood Reporter, he had been suffering from Parkinson's disease prior to his death. As could be expected, directing Mad About You was a major part of his resume, as he helmed 31 episodes out of the series' 164 total. In July 2013, Monteith was found dead in a Vancouver hotel room, and a toxicology report revealed that his cause of death was a lethal combination of alcohol and heroin. One of the episodes was the one in which Hunt's character gave birth, which had to have been an extra special experience for both of them, even if the birth was fictional. As Helen said when remembering her father, if you asked 100 people who knew him, 100 of them would say he was the kindest man they ever knew. Even before his death, she honored him. She dedicated her 2014 surfing film Ride to him, as he was an active and avid bodysurfer from the 1930s until just a few years before his death. A passion for activism being a woman, and especially one with a daughter, it makes sense that women's rights would be a big issue in Helen Hunt's life. It's one that she's shown she's willing to fight for. In 2012, Hunt appeared on NBC's Who Do You Think You Are?, a show showing celebrities learning about their family tree. Monteith was only 31, the teen idol who could do comedy, drama, and sing still had a long, promising career ahead of him. Sammy Kane Kraft. It's almost a guarantee that a remake isn't going to be as good as the original, but one of the better ones in recent years was the 2005 retread of The Bad News Bears. It probably helped that the director was Richard Linklater, helmer of films like Dazed and Confused and Boyhood, who cast lovable rogue Billy Bob Thornton as foul-mouthed, hard-drinking team manager Morris Buttermaker, and a delightful rookie actress named Sammy Kane Kraft as Amanda Wurlitzer, the team's star pitcher. There, according to Parade's recap, Hunt learned that her great-great-grandmother was a pivotal figure in the battle for women's equality. This must have ignited a spark in Hunt, as she's been vocal about women's rights, both in Hollywood and out, since. During a 2015 interview with The Huffington Post, in reaction to the interviewer saying there were few roles in Hollywood for older women, she said, "What are the great movies for younger women, where they're the protagonist, being made now? The whole thing, there's no equal rights amendment. Where ****ed. Kraft, 13 at the time of the film's release, had never acted professionally, and got the part originated by Tatum O'Neal in the 1976 Bad News Bears. Thanks to her formidable baseball skills, she threw a 75 mph fastball at a casting call. After the film, Kraft played high school softball, enrolled in college, and started a folk rock band called Scary Girls. I'm tired of the billboard where a girl's barely in her underwear and they're selling, you know, a watch or something. She later made her stance further known by joining the Women's March to protest the inauguration of Donald Trump, based on derogatory things he said about women before and during his campaign. Then, late one night in October 2012, Kraft was riding in an Audi that struck a semi-truck, which was then rear-ended. Even if Hunt never acts again, she's certainly got plenty of work ahead of her. Her big movie was pulled before it hit theaters in 2017. Helen Hunt was primed for a cinematic comeback, tapped for a major role in a new film by one of Hollywood's most respected content creators. Written and directed by Louis C.K., the Woody Allen-esque, black and white I Love You, Daddy concerns a TV writer, also Louis C.K., who doesn't know what to do when his young daughter, Chloe Grace Moritz, starts to date a significantly older and legendarily sleazy filmmaker, John Malkovich. Hunt co-starred as Aura, ex-wife of C.K.'s character and mother of Moritz's. I Love You, Daddy was set for a star-studded premiere in New York on November 9, 2017, but the event was cancelled at the last minute upon The New York Times published accounts of 5 women who accused CK of sexual misconduct. Kraft was pronounced dead at a Los Angeles hospital. She was 20. Anton Yelchin built an eclectic filmography over the course of his too brief career, but he certainly got the most attention for co-starring as Chekhov in the rebooted Star Trek film franchise. A subsequent theatrical release was immediately taken off the table as well, with C.K. Walter Koenig, who played Chekhov in the original series, wasn't actually Russian, but that's something Yelchin could bring to his character. Buying back the rights to the film. He was born in Russia during the Soviet Union era, but defected to the U.S. as of 2020. I Love You, Daddy remains unreleased, robbing Helen Hunt of a showy role in a big movie. She's been working in some low-key projects. It's not like Helen Hunt has stopped acting in the 2 avenues in which she's best known and has been most successful, feature films and over-the-air television. Perhaps she can afford to be choosy, a status afforded by her many seasons on the successful and lucratively syndicated Mad About You. She just doesn't appear in a ton of projects each year. With his parents when he was still just a kid. Since the 1-2 punch of the end of Shots Fired and the cancellation of I Love You, Daddy, Hunt has acted in about half a dozen projects. In 2018, she starred in The Miracle Season, an inspiring family film based on the real-life story of an Iowa high school volleyball team that won a championship in the wake of a tragedy. In addition to the extremely financially successful and critically well-received Star Trek movies, Yelchin had earned good notice for his work in a variety of movies, including Green Room, Fright Night, and Charlie Bartlett. Hunt played the coach, Kathy Bresnahan, but the film bombed with a $10 million box office take. Hunt followed the movie with World on Fire, an epic World War II miniseries that aired on the BBC and PBS. Despite glowing reviews, it didn't exactly, set the world on fire. Did cosmetic surgery affect her career prospects? Hollywood actors are left in a tough bind. Yelchin was only just starting to emerge as a major talent with an equally impressive range when he died in 2016, the victim of a bizarre, single-vehicle car accident that occurred after he stepped out of his Jeep in his own driveway. The car rolled, and pinned him against a brick pillar. When they're no longer young and fresh-faced, they lose out on roles in an industry obsessed with youth and its attractiveness. So, in order to keep landing the big-time roles to which they are accustomed and deserving, they may get a little cosmetic surgery to smooth out the lines, creases, and bags that appear on their faces because they dared to age. Sometimes, those procedures aren't completely effective, and rather than making the familiar star look like themselves, they appear to look different or even unrecognizable, meaning they have trouble gaining roles because they've lost their greatest calling card, their faces. It's possible that such a fate befell Helen Hunt. The Los Angeles County coroner attributed his death to blunt traumatic asphyxia. Yelchin was only 27 years old. Rebecca Schaeffer. After the demise of Mork and Mindy in 1982, star Pam Dawber returned to TV in 1986 with a CBS sitcom called My Sister Sam. The analysts at Glamour Path speculated, with thorough photographic analysis, that Hunt went under the knife, pointing out that her face and neck appear noticeably different. Dawber played a cool San Francisco photographer named Sam who opened up her hip loft to her plucky teenage sister, Patty. It may have initially been Dawber's show, but the breakout star was Rebecca Schaeffer, a 19-year-old actress with just a few bit parts to her credit when she landed the role of Patty. Hunt hasn't admitted to booking any plastic surgery, but viewers of her miniseries World on Fire were convinced she had, and that her new look was too distracting to enjoy the show. The world didn't go mad for a new Mad About You in November 2019. Helen Hunt returned to the role, and the massively successful TV show, that not only made her famous but netted her 4 Emmy Awards and 3 Golden Globes, Jamie Buckman on the romantic sitcom Mad About You. While its initial run on NBC ended in 1999, it came back to TV on the tail end of the reboot craze that saw other 90s hits like Twin Peaks, The X-Files, and Roseanne return to open-armed viewers. Thanks in part to a plum time slot between Kate and Allie and Newhart, My Sister Sam was a top 30 hit in its first season. Ratings tanked when the show was moved around the schedule in Season 2, and My Sister Sam was cancelled in 1988. It appeared that the 21-year-old Schaeffer's career would survive the quick rise and fall of her series, with a few gigs already in the hopper. The 12 new episodes of the series focused on the once young and newlywed Jamie and Paul Buckman, Paul Reiser, wondering what to do with themselves after their only child leaves for college. Mad About You version 2.0, however, just didn't click as well as its fellow revived classics, earning a middling 42% rating from critics on Rotten Tomatoes. That promising career was cut short, horrifyingly, by a stalker. An obsessive fan named Robert John Bardo hired a private detective to find Schaeffer's address, then went to Schaeffer's home on the morning of July 18, 1989, where he shot and killed her. Brandon Lee. More than 20 years gone, Brandon Lee is best and most remembered for the terrible circumstances of his death as opposed to his acting work.
If fans wanted to watch it, it was also kind of hard for them to do so, as it aired on Spectrum Originals, a relatively obscure network that serves as the showcase channel for a cable company. Poor Helen Hunt, she tried to give the people what they wanted, but they apparently didn't want more Mad About You. That's too bad, because Lee had only just begun to show audiences his capabilities. After starring in enjoyable but slight action movies like Showdown in Little Tokyo and Rapid Fire, Lee won the title role in The Crow, based on the comic book of the same name by James O'Barr. Lee played the titular undead superhero, a dark angel who stalks the grimy, drug and crime-infested city where he was murdered seeking revenge against the thugs that killed him and his fiancée. That plot line became sadly too close for comfort when Lee was killed on the set of The Crow due to an accident involving an improperly loaded prop gun. At the time of his death in 1993, Lee was only 28, 4 years younger than the age reached by his also gone too soon father, legendary martial arts superstar Bruce Lee. Heather O'Rourke. Even if you've never seen any of the Poltergeist movies, you can probably identify the original movie's most indelible moments, including a pajama-clad, tow-headed little girl entranced by the white noise coming out of a TV set, creepily warning her family they're here. Most kids can't handle watching a freaky scary movie, let alone star in 3 of them, but Heather O'Rourke could and did, breaking out as the 7-year-old star of the first Poltergeist in 1982 and sticking around for a pair of sequels. The Poltergeist franchise proved a study in diminishing returns, but there was no reason to expect anything but great things from O'Rourke's career. Sadly, in February 1988, she told her parents she had severe abdominal pain. They rushed her to Children's Hospital of San Diego, where doctors discovered that O'Rourke had intestinal stenosis, a condition that leads to chronic bowel obstructions, and that she'd probably unknowingly had it since birth. An obstruction in her system caused an infection, which led to sepsis, which sent her into fatal cardiac and pulmonary arrest. Beyond tragically, O'Rourke was only 12 years old. John Candy. Even on the densely packed comedy star training ground that was the late 70s, early 80s sketch comedy show SCTV Network, the cast included Dave Thomas, Eugene Levy, Catherine O'Hara, and Rick Moranis. John Candy was a standout. He went on to become one of the greatest comedy actors of all time, and he did it in what was, in hindsight, a shockingly short period of time, only about 15 years. Candy was just in so many great movies, all released in the 80s and early 90s, and endlessly rerun on many content-hungry burgeoning cable networks. His first major film role came as the Blues Brothers tracking Burton Mercer in The Blues Brothers. Next came, in rapid succession, Stripes, National Lampoon's Vacation, Splash, Summer Rental, Spaceballs, Planes, Trains and Automobiles, The Great Outdoors, Uncle Buck, Home Alone, and Cool Runnings, to name a handful. He almost died doing what he loved, making a funny movie. Candy collapsed and died from a fatal heart attack after a day of filming on the movie Wagons East. Candy was just 43. Misty Upham. Actor Misty Upham, a member of the Blackfeet Nation, started acting in films in 2002, specializing in projects by Native American filmmakers about Native American life and issues, such as Jimmy P., Psychotherapy of a Plains Indian, Skinwalkers, Dreamkeeper, and Skins. Her breakout role came in the 2008 indie film Frozen River, in which Upham played a broke and desperate bingo parlor employee named Lila Littlewolf. She earned a slew of accolades from films festival and guilds, including Best Supporting Actress at the American Indian Film Festival, Best Newcomer by the Alliance of Women Film Journalists, and, biggest of all, an Independent Spirit Award nomination for Best Supporting Female. Upham parlayed Frozen River into roles in some major, critically acclaimed Hollywood films, including Django Unchained and August, Osage County. Sadly, Upham's personal life wasn't so easy. She struggled with substance abuse and mental illness, and in October 2014, Upham, 32, disappeared. Her body was discovered in a ravine in rural Washington 11 days later. John Cazale. John Cazale's face is a striking and familiar presence in several classics of 1970s Hollywood, a period of film renaissance notable for dark, complex projects sprung from the minds of visionary directors. Cazale, an accomplished theatrical actor, was apparently quite the muse to this new breed of auteurs, as his world-weary, hangdog, slightly menacing mug graced The Godfather, The Godfather Part II. He portrayed the doomed, two-faced Fredo Corleone, The Conversation, Dog Day Afternoon, and The Deer Hunter. Of those 5 films, all were nominated for the Academy Award for Best Picture within a 6-year period 1972 to 1978. Both Godfathers and The Deer Hunter won. Those are also the only 5 movies in which Cazale acted. And yet, he only had an absolutely perfect acting resume because he died of cancer in 1978 at the age of 42. Who knows what other classic movies Khazali could have gone on to markedly improve with his performance. Bruce Lee. Martial arts legend Bruce Lee made some of the best-loved kung fu movies of all time, and he seemed like he was only getting started in 1973, when he died of brain swelling at the age of 33. The Lee family's tragic history continued in 1993, when Lee's son Brandon was accidentally shot and killed while filming a scene during production on The Crow. Just 28 when he died, Brandon might have taken his father's legacy even further. Instead, his death added another dark chapter to an already grim story. The specter of mysterious untimely death has continued to hover over the Lee family for decades, much to the chagrin of their survivors. Bruce's widow Linda penned an angry letter to the Los Angeles Times in response to a 1998 report suggesting her husband was a marijuana addict who died after taking too much aspirin, attempting to debunk any questions surrounding what she described as a painstakingly investigated death. "Without going into every detail, let me rebut for those who wish to know the truth," she wrote. Bruce died from cerebral edema caused by hypersensitivity to an ingredient in a prescription medication called Equagesic. This determination was made after an exhaustive, 9-day coroner's inquest during which the testimony of forensic pathologists from all over the world, who had studied every tissue in Bruce's body, was heard. Sharon Tate. Sharon Tate's name will forever be associated with one of the darkest and most horrifying moments in American history, when Charles Manson and his cult-like family terrorized Los Angeles with a series of murders in the summer of 1969. On August 9, Manson and 4 of his followers entered a home in the Benedict Canyon area of L.A. and killed the group of friends hanging out there. Among the victims, coffee heiress Abigail Folger, hairstylist to the stars Jay Sebring, and 26-year-old actress Sharon Tate, who was 8.5 months pregnant. Manson picked the house, rented by Tate and her new husband, director Roman Polanski, because a producer who once turned him down for a record deal lived there at one time. The circumstances of Tate's death are bewilderingly sad and terrible, wondering what could have been as far as her acting career is concerned pales in importance. That said, she was a major star in the making. She'd already starred in 2 cult classics, The Fearless Vampire Killers and Valley of the Dolls, for which she received a Golden Globe nomination for Most Promising Newcomer.